Hi, Ryan Walt here with Bud Kauffman from the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. We're here today to go over boat maintenance.
So Ryan, our agency brought a new motor. What's the best thing we can do to get the best serviceability out of the motor itself and make it operate properly?
Yeah, the main thing that you're going to want to look at is the owner's manual. Okay. There's so many makes, models, manufacturers out there. You really need to take a look and review the owner's manual for specifications, lubrication points, maintenance cycles. This is really going to be your go-to for your agency department whenever you're maintaining that motor.
So Ryan, what's the biggest differences we need to know about between two-stroke and four-stroke engines?
Alright, primary difference for the operator is going to be either straight gas for a 4-cycle or mixed fuel, different types of ratios for a 2-cycle. And what we have here is for a 2-stroke engine, like we have here, this Outboard Evinrude has the cowling off so you can see it. So this is 2-stroke oil. So you actually mix this 2-stroke oil to a ratio. This one specifically is 40:1. You mix this with straight gas, and then that's what actually goes through and lubricates your combustion chamber whenever the engine's running. With a 4-cycle engine, you're just running straight gas, and you actually have a separate oil tank that's filled that lubricates the transfer case, just like a vehicle, just like a car.
Do all two-stroke engines use the same ratio?
No, not all different types of manufacturers. Again, that's why you refer to your owner's manual. There's all different types of ratios. Some Yamahas take 100:1. Evinrudes, Mercury, some of those are 40 or 50:1. So that's why it's really persistent on the operator, agency department to take a look at that owner's manual, make sure that they have the ratios correct, and make sure that their fuel tanks and engines are properly marked for that ratio.
Will that reduce our maintenance costs?
Absolutely, as long as you're following the manufacturer's guidelines, making sure that your fuel tanks are properly marked, your outboards are properly marked for that ratio, it's going to reduce costs in the long run. It's going to let your engine perform a lot better as you're out on the water.
So if the motor runs better, it's safer for our rescuers, right?
Absolutely. That's why we're here, and this is what we're all about.
So Ron, some departments have reported problems with lower ethanol fuels, lower octane fuels, and gas being stale. Is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of products out there in the market, in the marine department specifically, to combat that ethanol fuel problem. There's a lot of resources, information out there on ethanol fuel and different impacts it has on marine outboard motors specifically. So one of the products is Stable. There's some other products out there, Quicksilver, Startron, a lot of different makes, manufacturers, but end goal is that it's a fuel stabilizer. So one of the things, you can take a look at it, one of the things that it does is if you're going to be storing your fuel for an extended period of time, you can actually measure out the ratio, which is usually just a couple ounces to 10 gallons. It'll treat and put it into your fuel tank, and it's going to help stabilize that fuel so you're not going to have as many issues. It's going to lower maintenance costs, and it's something that we like to practice and let everybody know that we're instructing to try to utilize some type of fuel stabilizer, because in the long run it's going to help your motor run more efficiently.
Looks like this fuel additive also works with all ethanol blends, and it'll stabilize your gas even if it's in storage for up to 12 months.
Yeah, that stuff, it does seem to work, and we've utilized it on all of our boats and motors.
Looks like it prevents corrosion too.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're just going over maintenance of your outboard motor. So real basic, we're talking about the lower transfer case oil here. So inside this lower unit, it's all filled with different types, depending on the manufacturer, of lubrication oil. So to change this, is what you want to do is, here's the top bolt, you break that loose, unscrew it to make sure you can get that out, and then this lower bolt here, you unscrew this, and then all the oil is actually going to drain out of your lower unit. So the reason you do this is because over time it can develop leaks, it can get water in the housing here, and if water gets in here, then you're in a cold environment, that water is going to freeze, and what does water do when it freezes? It expands, so then you can actually crack this lower case. So that's why you want to keep that oil changed out regularly, maintained, to make sure you have proper lubrication and you're getting any of the water condensation out of this housing. Very simple process and goes a long way in keeping your motor running efficiently for a long time. Now we're going to talk about lubrication points on an outboard motor. Again, it's going to be specific to the manufacturer and the motor. On this Evinrude 2-stroke, you can see down here this grease fitting. all you do with the grease fittings is you attach just a hand power grease gun, and you make sure that you pump in grease until you feel a little bit of resistance, and that's going to lubricate that. You're going to find these anywhere where that motor pivots. So we have one right down here in the lower unit. On the front of the engine, you'll have it actually where you're utilizing that tilt lever and that motor's swinging on an axle going up and down. So anywhere on an outboard motor, depending on make, model, where that motor's going to pivot, there should be a grease fitting. And it's one of the things that people kind of forget about or disregard, but we want to make sure that you know about them and to keep them properly maintained in accordance with the owner's manual.
So our department has different size motors and different motors we use on our watercraft. What's the best way to keep track of maintenance records and things like that?
Yeah, a great way to keep track of it is obviously you're going to have that serial number in your inventory, but one of the easiest things to do is just go ahead and mark your motors by a number, and then also it's good to just put the fuel ratio on there, specifically if you have 2-stroke motors. So what that'll allow you to do is if you are having an issue when you're out there doing training or something happens, you can easily identify it, the operator can identify it, get that back to your logistics, and then they're going to be able to take a look at it and get it to a mechanic if it needs to be maintained.
We had a motor one time where we were actually using it on a rescue, and one of the guys went to start the motor, and for some reason the recoil line came out like this. Is there a solving issue for that?
Yeah, it could be a couple different issues depending on what's going on, but one of the common things that'll happen is whenever you go to pull this, it'll come to the end, engine didn't start, and now it's stuck here. So a common thing to do is it's probably in gear. So why don't you go ahead and hit that shift lever, put it in neutral, and see what happens. So that's what it was. So it was just in gear, so it wasn't allowing that to recoil. So if that happens in the future, just make sure we tell our personnel to try to put that motor in neutral, and hopefully it'll reset and recoil back in.
Very good. Tell us a little bit about prop maintenance and care.
Okay, first thing about props is, again, just reviewing, we have jets, pump jets, and props. So this is what we're looking at right here is a prop. One thing is that this is an aluminum prop. You also see performance stainless steel props, but they're more for recreational style boats, not necessarily rescue boats. We want to stick with the aluminum, so that way if you hit a rock, it's going to go ahead and bend this prop and not bend the shaft or break the shear pin, which we have right here. So if this shear pin breaks, you're not operating anymore. So once this actually breaks here, this actually goes right around the shaft. If this little key snaps off, then you're going to have to paddle back to shore. Your boat's not going to be operational. So that's why we like to utilize aluminum props.
Should we carry spares?
Absolutely. You want to carry spare cotter pins, bolts, spare props as well, because you can change them out in the field very easily, and we're going to show you how right now. So you have a little castle nut in here, a little cotter pin, which we'll go ahead and pull out. We already bent it, and we'll go ahead and pull this out. Sometimes they can be a little bit sticky. You have to watch out for the spindles on the prop there. And here's our old cotter pin. You always want to replace them with a new cotter pin, okay? Because over time that metal weakens. So sometimes you can twist these off, other times you can't. You can have a pair of channel locks here, or a little adjustable wrench. You're not going to have to really make it break it away too much or make this castle nut too tight. See, one turn, and you should be able to pull it off with your hand. You want to make sure that you keep these spindles when you replace the prop properly lubed with some type of lithium marine grade grease. So here's the castle nut. Here's the key right here. So you want to make sure that when you take it off, you just set them aside the same way that they went onto that prop. And you can go ahead and pull that prop off. Okay? Easy thing here. So this one has lubrication on it. You can add some more lubrication with a grease gun. Again, some type of marine lithium grade grease that's going to hold up. And we can go get our new prop and put it on. We'll show you how to do that. Okay, we have the old prop off and we have the new prop ready to go on. So once we take a look at this new prop, this is actually a reconditioned prop. So you don't need to go out and buy a brand new prop every time. You can actually take it to some marinas, some shops, and they recondition them because they're aluminum. So they'll weld the new blades on and grind them down to make sure it's the same proper size and pitch that your original prop was. So that's definitely key to take a look at. So
what kind of damage gets caused when you knock a big chunk off a prop like this, Ryan?
Well, your boat's still going to be operational. You're just going to feel some vibration. It's not going to have as much top-end performance, but you are going to still have some maneuverability, which is a good thing with the props. Okay, we have the old prop off. Once we put the new prop on, again, we're just going to show you this. You just go ahead and seat this against the new prop. You're going to spin this castle nut on, and you spin this castle nut on all the way until you're actually able to see the holes line up on the castle nut. And we're just going to show you, and once those holes line up, this is where your new cotter pin ends up dropping in. Sometimes it's a little bit sticky. That'll drop in there, and then we just bend this around the new prop, and then you'll be back in business. Okay, one of the things we can do if we have a prop that has some paint chipped off on it, it's not too badly damaged, so we can still utilize it for training or operations. You can just take a can of black spray paint and spray these fins to make it completely black again. So that way you're going out on the water and you come back in and you can see if you have any other mars on your prop, give you an indication of how you or somebody else is operating the boat, and to see if they're running aground at all. So just some little tip that we like to share with you. So just some black spray paint, you can make these look as good as new, and then you're going to be able to identify if the prop chipped bottom or chipped some type of obstruction or debris. Okay, one of the best practices is to go ahead and run your motor before you get down to the water. So one of the things, you can get a bunch of different, they call them earwigs, scuppers, a bunch of different makes, models. All you do is slide this right onto the lower unit, attach your hose here, and start your hose, and water will be running through your lower unit. One thing to keep in mind is, since it is an outboard motor, water's not going to go up into the head to start cooling it until that engine's running. One of the things with PWCs or some other types of boats is that you'll do a direct connection to the head of the motor. In that case, you want to have the motor running before you start that water, or you'll fill your whole combustion chamber up with water. So lower units, very easy. Attach a scupper, get the hose running, water's going to leak out, and then as soon as the motor's started, it's going to start pulling water into the head to start cooling it. When that happens, you want to look for this outlet hole. So water should be coming out of this little outlet hole just like a stream. It'll initially start off as cold water. As that motor gets heated up, that water is going to get warm, and in some cases it'll be pretty hot. So if this is clogged or you're not getting any water out of there, you either have an issue with your water pump, or this little line up here could be clogged. So you want to take that cowling off, which we showed you earlier, and check in the head of your motor, make sure that you don't have water pooling in there, making sure that your cooling system is completely free of debris. Okay, so now that we've gone over some basic boat maintenance, we're going to go ahead and show you how to go about hooking up the fuel to your outboard motor, making sure the kill switch is properly attached, and how you go and get operational.
So does it matter which way the fuel line gets attached to the motor and the tank?
It absolutely does. So what we have here, another good thing to keep spare parts of, is fuel lines. They typically go bad, especially if they're out in the sun, they get dry rotted. So one of the things that we want to do whenever we connect the fuel tank is, if you look at that primer bulb, it actually has an arrow on it. So that arrow points towards the motor. So we want to make sure that's typically the short end right here. We just attach this, as we showed you earlier. It can only fit on one way. You go ahead and attach that to the fuel cell. You should push it, hear a good click, and you're going to see it's going to be vacuumed on there. So you're going to have a good connection. Go ahead.
Attach this the same way?
Absolutely. Attach that the same way.
Good positive click.
You see the fuel primer bulb here? It's pointing towards the line, running up to the engine. Once you have this, you go ahead, squeeze the primer bulb. As you squeeze this, you should feel fuel coming through. As soon as this primer bulb gets hard, it means that the fuel line is primed and there's actually fuel getting into the outboard. So at this point, we're ready to take a look at the kill switch.
So tell me about the kill switch in the lanyard.
Okay, the kill switch in the lanyard, you need to make sure that that is connected appropriately. We showed you in an earlier piece. Again, manufacturers have a bunch of different kill switch styles. So what we like to suggest is that you actually, for the rescue application, get a multi-switch. Okay, this multi-switch here Has switches for Hondas, Yamahas, Johnsons, Evinrudes, Mercuries, Nissans. So that way, if you're hopping from boat to boat or have to take some other boat that you don't have equipment for, you're always going to have that lanyard attached to your life jacket as a universal switch, because you never really know where you're going to end up in a rescue situation.
So they fit all the most common motors.
Absolutely. So this is definitely a good takeaway. Make sure you get yourself a multi-key lanyard. All right.
Where's this get attached?
That's going to get attached to your person. Some people like to attach it to their life jacket. Some people like to attach it down at their boot string. Just kind of depends on personal preference. Also depends on how that motor is riding in the boat. So again, it's going to be specific to that boat motor package, and then the preference of the individual operating it.
So if I understand right, when this is attached to the person, if you get ejected from the boat, it will automatically pull the kill switch and kill the motor?
Absolutely. That's the whole point of that safety lanyard, and in any type of rescue application, it's a must to have that attached.
So I know in the rescue world, Ryan, fuel starvation could be a problem, and the last thing you want to do is jeopardize rescuers by having a motor stalled out. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So a common problem if you're operating a boat and it does starve of fuel, it shuts off and you can't get the motor restarted, is definitely double check your connections, your connection to the outboard, your connection to the fuel cell. Make sure you don't have any leaks anywhere. Double check your kill switch. Make sure that your motor's in neutral. And if you still can't seem to start it, it's more than likely that there's a vapor lock either with the fuel cell or the fuel line. So a couple troubleshooting things that we can look at. All right, so come down here, make sure your connections are good. If they are good, all you need to do is check it out. Look right inside the fuel line. You should see a little ball in there.
Got it.
If that's offset or out of place or missing, then you're going to need a replacement fuel line. Another thing that you can do to troubleshoot while you're out on the water is you can go ahead up here to the engine, do the same thing, take a look at it, good connection. One of the things you can do is that little ball there, instead of connecting it right back up, just go ahead and take it to that top piece and just press in slightly. And if you press in slightly and it's clogged, you'll hear a gasp of air. It'll be a little puff of air, and then you should see some fuel kind of drip out. And if that's the case, then you just fixed your fuel line problem. Go ahead and reconnect it, reprime the motor, and then pull out the choke and give it a pull, and you should be back in business. One of the common things that can happen to your outboard is a fouled spark plug. So we just pulled the spark plug out of this outboard here, and you can see it. It's it's fouling. It may still run. One of the things you can do to troubleshoot it out in the field is actually spray it with some brake cleaner or some adhesive remover, something to get that grime off the head. If not, you want to have some spare spark plugs with you. So this one here is brand new, gapped accordingly, and all we have to do is screw this in, put the spark plug cap on, and it should run a lot better. We just want to make sure that whenever we're tightening this spark plug in here with that compression washer on there, gasket, you only want to do it about 3/4 to a full quarter turn, depending on the manufacturer of the plug, because that's going to seal up that combustion chamber. If you have any leaks within the spark plug here, remember it's going into the combustion chamber. Motor could misfire, could run leaner or richer. So to make sure that you have your spark plugs properly installed, just take a little bit of time, and it's going to allow your engine to perform much better.
What's the difference between a prop, a pump jet, and a pump?
Okay, so prop is what we just reviewed earlier. You just have the prop on the end. It's got a true forward reverse. Pretty self-explanatory. A jet motor is a little bit different. It has an impeller, so it's going to constantly draw water the same way all the time. So whenever you go in reverse, all you do is actually dropping down a gate behind it and redirecting the water. So disadvantages, advantages to either or. And what you see a lot in the rescue world too are these rescue pros or pump jets or pumps. So the difference between this and a jet or a prop is that it's self-enclosed. It actually still has what they call an impeller in here, but it actually has a true forward and reverse. So whenever you move that gear shifter into forward, that impeller spins one way. When you put it in reverse, it actually spins the opposite direction. So you have a true forward and reverse. So if you get any debris in here, you can actually blow it out. One of the advantages to this is that it's all self-enclosed, so you mitigate that prop chop or that risk of injury. One of the disadvantages is it's not quite as maneuverable or as much top-end performance as a prop motor. So advantages, disadvantages. One of the main things, if you look inside here, is it's still similar to a jet in the way that it's based off clearance for performance. So you get a lot of sand, gravel, dirt, debris, you get a bent fin on the impeller in there, you're going to reduce your performance a lot. Same realm is not everybody works on these, okay? So from the lower unit down, it's its own unit, a pump jet. From the top up, it's just like any other motor, power head's the same, everything else. So they do sell and supply spare impellers, so it's still good to have some of those on stock as well if you damage one. Main thing is that you have to utilize an Allen key to take this housing off, and they're all sunken in here by stainless steel Allen bolts. So you can replace this out in the field, but not quite as quickly as you can a prop. Mitigates injury because it's self-enclosed, but it does reduce a little bit of performance. A lot of folks like to utilize these just because of that risk of victims or rescuers being in the water. They like to utilize a pump jet. So it's again, risk versus reward, whatever your department, agency likes to choose to utilize it. One of the key things with these also is that this does add a bit of weight to it. So if you do have to pick up your boat, motor, move it from point A to point B, this is going to add a little bit of weight. But as far as maintenance wise, they're actually not too bad. Again, you just need to make sure that you have some Allen keys with you, that if you do need to change that impeller, you have them.
So Ron, we went over a lot of information today, hopefully to keep our rescuers safe.
Yeah, absolutely. We went over boat maintenance, some tips, tricks that's going to keep you safer while you're out there on the water, and just always remember, follow the manufacturer's guidelines for the specific make, model, manufacturer, engine that you're going to be utilizing in your department or agency.
Most importantly, fellas, be safe out there when you're doing your rescues and helping people out.